Hello everyone, semi-retired Bob here. I talk about the carnivore diet and all things related to the carnivore diet and a few miscellaneous odds and ends. Today we're going to talk about metabolic syndrome. We've talked about this before, but today is a pretty special day and we'll get into that down at the end of the video and why I'm talking about metabolic syndrome. First, I want to say thank you and welcome to everyone watching this video. If this is your first time here, I'm glad you're here. If you've been here many times before, thank you as well. I really appreciate everyone taking time out of their day to stop by and see what an old retired truck driver has to say. That really does mean a lot. Let me see if I can. Yeah, that looks a little better. It means an awful lot to me. But what is metabolic syndrome? It's a set of conditions that by themselves don't necessarily mean you're sick, but you put them all together and it's a very good indicator that you have or are on the road to having many different diseases. You know, metabolic syndrome, most famously, of course, because the first thing to talk about, one of the signs of metabolic syndrome is high blood sugar, which leads to insulin resistance, which insulin resistance isn't actually what's the word I'm looking for? It's not a disease all by itself. It's more of a set of circumstances that I don't know how to say this. I'm trying not to get in trouble with Professor K, because insulin resistance is just a way to describe how your body is reacting to the insulin, which is a hormone, actually. So you have to, there's a lot of things that go into it, but there is no kit or test that they can run to say you've got insulin resistance. What it really is or means is that when you're sorry, this isn't making a lot of sense. It's Sunday. Just got done with all the church stuff. Trying to get some walk in here. I'm not sure which way to hold the camera with the sun over there. Let's try that. But it just means that your body is making too much insulin because you keep dumping sugar into it. There's where I was trying to go with it. Because you keep dumping sugar into it, it takes more and more and more insulin to deal with that sugar in your blood, which is inappropriate, of course. You're not supposed to have a bunch of sugar in your blood. I forget exactly what it is, the total, but I'm pretty sure I've heard somewhere that the average person, if you leave it up to your body and don't eat any extra sugar, the entirety of your bloodstream has like a teaspoon of glucose in it. So you can imagine what eating 2 or 3 jelly donuts would do to your blood sugar. And if you continue to do that, that's why you store fat and can never burn it, because your insulin stays high. And it messes with a lot of other things. I'm just going to have to hold it out here. Sorry if you guys are getting blinded by the sun behind me. I'll be across the field and turn here in just a few minutes. But it's, because it's a hormone, it affects all your other hormones. So having a constantly high insulin can lead to a lot of different problems. But anyway, let's move on for this. That's the hard one. Sort of got that out of the way first. That air's got a little bite to it. It's only about 56 degrees out here today, but it is bright and sunny. I don't feel like walking in a jacket. Hard enough to walk in long pants. Although, I got a pair of hiking pants coming. They're not great hiking pants, but they were on sale on an early Black Friday deal on Amazon. They're cheap ones that I got for like 12 bucks. And they've got the zipper on legs, so you can wear them as either shorts or long pants. So we'll see how those work out. I figure for 12 bucks, it's probably worth giving it a go. As you can see, I'm behind the big building here, and I stepped into the shade for a moment. It's only 3 in the afternoon, and the sun's already getting down there quite a ways, which is why I'm trying to get this walk in before the sun goes down, or at least before it gets so low I can't deal with it at all. But that's the first marker of metabolic syndrome. And what I should have started with, there's 5 of them. And the newest study I found said that 85% of all Americans show at least one marker of metabolic syndrome, which means 85% of Americans are on their way to becoming diseased and sick. That doesn't leave very many healthy people, does it? One of the things people are always worried about when they do keto, ketovore, carnivore, lion diet, low carb, any of those things, is their cholesterol. Oh, your cholesterol's going to go way up. You can't do that diet, your cholesterol's going to go out of control. Well, the 2 cholesterols that we're concerned with are 2 of the markers of metabolic syndrome. First one is high triglycerides. Now, if you really want to know how triglycerides happen, you can watch Professor K's channel, and he'll talk at length about the Randall cycle. And the general gist, if I understand this right, now every time I start watching his videos on the Randall cycle, it all makes perfect sense while he's explaining it, and then it just flies right out of my brain when I try to recall what I've watched. Which is why I think you actually have to be someone who has studied human physiology and biology and all that stuff for decades to truly understand it. But the general gist of it is when you mix carbohydrates and fat, your cells, once they're filled up with fuel, they kind of like lock the door to letting any more fuel in. And when the cells are locked up, and it doesn't have anything that it can do with the fatty acids that you put into your system, then those get shunted off into other places and stored and released into the bloodstream to eventually be gotten rid of. But that's your that's where triglycerides come from in general. It's a lot more complicated than that. You know, we all know that eating fat doesn't make you fat, and eating fat doesn't make you have high triglycerides. It's the combination of doing many bad things. I think I've said this before on my channel. What you really need to know about the Randale cycle is that fat is good. Carbohydrates are bad. And eating fat and carbohydrates together are truly awful for you. And the other cholesterol that we need to look at is the third marker of metabolic syndrome, which is low HDL. So in general, you want your HDL, which stands for high density lipoproteins, I think. But it's the so-called good cholesterol. Even though I think all cholesterols, except triglycerides, are actually kind of good for you, since your body is made up by a lot of it. But you want your HDL above 50. I think it's 50 in men and 45 in women or something. It's a different scale, but generally one of the high triglycerides and the low HDL are both markers of metabolic syndrome. And the real risk factor happens, I believe it's a 2-to-1 ratio or less, because you want to have your triglycerides under 150 and your HDL over 50, and you divide the two out and they come up with some formula that tells if you're at higher risk of certain diseases. And risk is not a good word either. If you have the possibility of those possibly contributing to a disease or a condition. But the other two are really easy to talk about. High blood pressure. That's pretty simple. They keep moving the scale, trying to get it lower and lower. But I tend to go by the DOT recommendations to get a DOT medical card so that you can actually drive a big truck. You have to have a blood pressure lower than 140 over 90, which is still fairly high. And if you never want to feel safe on the roads again, I will tell you there is a great number of truck drivers that only get to have their medical cards are normally for 2 years at a time. They only get to have it for 1 year at a time because their blood pressure is above that range to a certain point. It's like 150 over 110 and you can get a 1 year license, something like that. They keep changing those guidelines, which is why I use 140 over 90. And then they actually have a 3-month exemption that you can get one time. It lets you go all the way up to like 170 over 120, I think it is. I don't remember exactly. But that's a scary thought. You've got truck drivers out there literally on the verge of one of the many diseases that can be caused by ultra high blood pressure, and they're driving an 80,000 pound rig down the road. Doesn't that make you feel safe? And the other one is visceral obesity. That's fat in the middle section. And really the whole reason why I'm talking about this today. And that's basically just a waist measurement. And I'm not talking about, measuring below your belly like so many guys do. As I see, I can still get into these size 36 pants. Well, you've got them buttoned up at your hips instead of up to your waist. That's a little lie people like to tell themselves. But I've been holding on to this, well, the one part just for a day, and the rest of it, I had one of the doctors here in the church just run a lipid panel, because the last one, like 2.5 months ago, my triglycerides were still a little high and my HDL was still a little low. But I can happily report that my triglycerides are down to 127, which is below the threshold of 150. And my HDL, which had been hovering at 37 for decades, is up to 58. So all of my lipid panels, the ones that matter, are right in line. Yes, my LDL is a little elevated. It was not a lot elevated, just a little elevated. So I'm pretty pleased with all that. But the big one that, the visceral fat, the belly fat, it's men have a waist size above 40, women above 35 inches. Now, everybody's going to be different. And I wouldn't really use that as a hard, fast rule. Because if you're getting down to the lowest weight you've ever been at, and let's say you're a gal and you've got a 36-inch waist instead of a 35-inch waist, I wouldn't stress over it too much. It will probably eventually go down, but don't sweat that kind of stuff. It's just not worth it. But The whole reason I bring this all up now is that let's go back over the list. High blood sugar, insulin resistance. I don't have that. My blood glucose on stick readings, unless I've just eaten, is 70 to 75. After a meal, it can go up to about 100. But it comes right back down again within an hour or so. Sometimes it takes a little longer if I've eaten a lot, like the day I ate that 3.5 pounds of roast. It took a couple hours for that to work its way through. So, high blood sugar, insulin resistance, I don't have. Because my A1C is still holding steady at 4.8. High blood pressure, I showed that in another video. After walking for 15 minutes, I forget exactly what it was. It was like, what was it? 116 over 70 or something like that. I tell you what, since we're coming up on the shady section where I'll be able to see it, let's just go ahead and run a quick blood pressure on my watch. Now, understanding the watch's BP can be off by plus or minus 10 points. It's never, that's why Dr. Berry suggests you take it on the upper arm while you're sitting still and relaxing, not while you're out walking laps for exercise and getting a video recorded. But, oh, come on, where'd you go? I guess I'll just have to stand still so I can see it when it pops. Come on. Sometimes this thing takes a while. Yeah, 114 over 73. And I'm most of the way around my third lap. So I don't have high blood pressure. So my triglycerides, my HDL, my blood pressure, and my blood sugar are all in range. Only thing left, visceral obesity. Measured around my waist yesterday. I didn't report on it yesterday because yesterday was Saturday. And that's a football day. I don't take very many measurements, but that's one of the things I measure when I jump on the scale on Saturday. And my waist was 39.5, which is below 40, which means I'm now, as crazy as it seems, as sick as I was 6 months ago, 6.5 months ago now, something like that. It's 6 months and a week, whatever it is. I had all 5 markers of metabolic syndrome. I had diabetes, arthritis, gout, fatty liver, stage 1 chronic kidney disease, and a partridge in a pear tree. I had it all. Luckily, I never got any gut or skin issues. But by all 5 markers, I no longer have any signs of metabolic syndrome. Which, as hard as it is to believe, if we go back to that 85% number, I am now, and that's saying something pretty sad about the American public, really. I am now in the top 15% of the healthiest people in the United States. How crazy is that? So let me know what you think down in the comments. Be sure and leave a comment if you've managed to reverse one or more of the markers for metabolic syndrome. Another person you can watch if you want the real actual science behind all this stuff, Dr. Jason Fung, has several really good videos on the subject. And those guys are way smarter than I am. Sorry I kind of stumbled through that explanation, but metabolic syndrome is one of those sciencey things I don't do very well with. But yeah, that's really all I got today. I do have some closing thoughts for you, but I'm going to go ahead and record a couple more laps while the sun's up and I've got the camera on. And then after I take a little break and put my roast in to start cooking, I'll probably do some more laps around the parking lot under the lights. But I, of course, somewhere at the end of the video will, like I always do, put up the mileage before the break and what I did for the day. But I'll see you at the end of the video. Let's cue the music. Okay, cut the music. Thank you. I just recorded one lap because I twisted my knee just a little bit out there. So I'm going to sit down and take a break a lap early. I'm sure it's going to be fine. It doesn't feel like it's going to hurt, but it does hurt a little bit walking now. So I'm going to rest that for just a little bit. But remember, the 5 markers of metabolic disease: high blood sugar, high blood pressure, visceral obesity, low HDL, and high triglycerides. 85, one state says 85, one says 88% of Americans are showing at least one of these factors of metabolic disease, which, since I now have none, puts me solidly in the top 15% metabolically of the healthiest people in this country. To all my regular viewers, sorry, that was a long way to go just to get to I no longer have any metabolic disease. And I'm sorry about that. But I was struggling with some ideas today. If you have any questions or good ideas for what you'd like to see me make a video about, be sure and leave those comments down below as well. But rest assured, I'll come up with something every day. Don't forget to get out there and be 1% better tomorrow. Over here should be a link to the entire September challenge, the start of my walking journey. Another one over here that you've never seen before. Have a great day, everyone. I'll see you tomorrow. Hi guys, I'm all done with a couple 3 extra laps. I'm not going to get quite as far as I have been for the last few days because some stuff came in from Amazon today that I'm excited to get on the trail and try tomorrow. I'll see you tomorrow.